We are called, each and every one, each human being, every one of us. We are called by the Creator, called to listen to holy wisdom, called to recognize goodness wherever and whenever it makes its epiphany, wherever and whenever love appears.
Welcome to this time of worship with Leaside United Church. Where I am right now is on land that for thousands of years has been the meeting place of many Indigenous peoples. The church building is on land part of the Toronto Purchase Treaty of 1787, Treaty 13 of 1805 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties of 1923. We are all treaty people living on treaty land, and so we are engaged in learning and working towards right relations. As we do every week, we light the Christ candle, the candle of peace, as a reminder of God's unconditional, radical, and abundant love present in every moment.
God, you find us in places that we thought were safe, and then challenge us. Yet you find us and love us in spite of ourselves. You find us when our lives are out of kilter and so far removed from the gospel. Yet you find us and love us in spite of ourselves. You find us when we are lost and feel alone, struggling to gain a foothold on the truth. Yet you find us and love us in spite of ourselves. For the grace given freely and the love that surrounds us, we thank you for the opportunity to start again. Amen. The Creator is always creating and making new. May you find a place in you where new things may grow.
1 Kings 3:16-28. Later, two women who were prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. The one woman said, "Please, my lord, this woman and I live in the same house, and I gave birth while she is in the house. Then on the third day after I gave birth, this woman also gave birth. We were together. There is no one else with us in the house, only the two of us were in the house. Then this woman's son died in the night because she lay on him. She got up in the middle of the night and took my son from beside me while your servant slept. She laid him at her breast, and she laid her dead son at my breast. When I arose in the morning to nurse my son, I saw that he was dead. I looked at him closely in the morning, and clearly it was not the son that I had borne." But the other woman said, "No, the living son is mine. The dead son is yours." And the first said, "No, the dead son is yours, and the living son is mine." So they argued before the king. The king said, "The one says, 'This is my son that is alive, and your son is dead.' While the other says, 'Not so. Your son is dead, and my son is the living one.' So the king said, 'Bring me a sword.' And they brought a sword before the king. The king said, 'Divide the living boy in two, and give one half to one and the other half to the other.' But the woman whose son was alive said to the king, because of compassion for her son burned within her, 'Please, my lord, give her the living boy. Certainly do not kill him.' The other said, 'It shall neither be mine nor yours. Divide it.' The king responded, 'Give the first one the living boy, and do not kill him. She is his mother.' All Israel heard the judgment that the king had rendered and stood in awe of the king, because they perceived that the wisdom of God was with him to execute justice."
I'd like to thank you all for giving me this chance to provide a sermon to you this morning. I wish I could be at your church today, but as we know, there's restrictions. Hopefully, in the fall, we'll all be able to get together and we can do pulpit swaps properly and I can actually see your faces. But for now, thank you for giving me a chance to do it this way. So today I want to talk about wisdom. For the past year or more, our society has yearned for wisdom. We've desperately wanted our leaders to be wise, and we've all struggled with making wise choices. Is it now a good time to visit a family member or a friend? How do we know if the government is giving us good advice? And how do you tell the difference between a wise choice and one that's really just self-serving? We've needed wisdom now more than ever, and it's still needed as we slowly emerge from this pandemic. Should life just go back to normal, or do we need to make some wise changes to how we live our society so that it can be better than it was before? As Christians, we place our trust in the Bible to be a source of wisdom. So today I want to talk about the Bible's most famous wise person, King Solomon. He's King David's son, and he's also the richest and the most powerful of all of Israel's monarchs. He famously, in a dream, was visited by God, and God asked him, "What do you want, Solomon?" And instead of asking for fame or fortune or power, Solomon asked for wisdom. God was impressed, and he complied by saying, "Because you didn't ask for fame or fortune or power, I'm going to give you wisdom, but I'll also give you wealth and power." Solomon is credited for having written the Proverbs, most of them anyway, and he was visited by major world leaders like the Queen of Sheba, who came to learn from the one they had heard is so wise. So hopefully, he can provide us with some wisdom that can apply to our situation today. Back in Solomon's day, kings had a number of hats that they had to wear, I guess a number of crowns. One was, of course, to make decisions about taxation, about when to go to war, those sort of big kingdom things. But kings were also expected to be kind of like the Supreme Court. They were the ones who would have the last word on any sort of decision. So if the aristocrats and the other judges at lower levels couldn't figure out how to solve a case, it would come to the king. And it was expected that the king would exercise judgment, and whatever he decided would stand. So that's what we hear today. Solomon has been presented with a case which no one else can solve. Two women have come forward saying that they are both the mother of a newborn child. It appears that both women gave birth around the same time. We're told that they were sex workers. And one of them has unfortunately killed their child by rolling over on it while she was sleeping. Now both women appear saying, "That is my child, you must give it to me." They're both distraught, which is exactly what you would expect from a mother in this situation. So Solomon has a tough decision to make. How does he discern who is the real mother? Solomon faces a vexing problem, which is found throughout the Bible and in real life. People lie. They lie because they've realized that they can get power and wealth by pretending to be good. Faking a resume is much easier than doing all the work it takes to get those credentials. Having someone else write an essay for you doesn't take as long as researching and writing the essay itself. The Bible is full of people who choose this dishonest past. Jacob steals Esau's birthright. Abraham lies to the Egyptians when they go down to Egypt, and he says that Sarai is his sister, not actually his wife. Liars abound in the Bible, and there's no sense in the Old Testament that they're ever going to go away. Deception is just a part of life, and it starts with that lying snake in the Garden of Eden. Part of wisdom is knowing the difference between lies and truth. In the case of these two women, Solomon comes up with a cunning solution. He orders for a sword to be brought forth so that the child can be cut in half. Well, the fake mother says, "Okay, works for me." From her perspective, she's going to be able to keep up the lie of being the real mother of this child. She's going to be able to just walk out of that court without ever having been punished for deceiving the king. She's thinking of herself and doesn't seem to care much at all about that child. Whereas the real mother completely freaks out. She says, no, give the child to the other woman. Consider the risk that she's taking. By saying that, she is saying to the court she must have been lying since she wants the child to be with the other woman. She faces possibly being flogged or thrown into jail or worse. You shouldn't lie to a king. But Solomon, being wise, realizes that she must be the real mother. Problem solved. The baby is allowed to live, and the mother and child are reunited. Solomon's threat has allowed him to peer into the minds of each woman. One doesn't really care about the baby, while the other cares deeply. Solomon has revealed that although people can appear good, there are critical differences in the way they think. The fakers are just looking out for themselves, while those who are really good care not just about themselves, but about others too. This story reveals that when it comes to wisdom, there's actually two levels at work. The first is to learn to separate the fake from the real. That's a key skill in leadership. But the second is that wisdom should make choices that are life-giving. The real mother is acting with a deep wisdom which goes beyond mere intellect. It's a kind of gut wisdom, one rooted in love. She would rather give up her child than see the child die. She would rather be seen as a liar and possibly face punishment than see her child suffer. This woman would rather see a life preserved, even if it means ruining her own life. This story suggests that wisdom is about choosing the path that is life-giving, that is based on love. By discovering who the real mother is, Solomon has found the child a home where it will receive all the love and care that it deserves. This is wisdom choosing the life-giving power of the universe itself. The child will now have a mother who is imbued with instincts that lead her to care for the child, even if it means making all sorts of sacrifices. A wise leader finds the life-giving solutions, and in doing so, aligns him or herself with the loving energy of the universe and nature. So what does this mean for our COVID times? Well, over the past year, our society has been faced with a terrible choice. Save the economy or save the population, but you can't do both in equal measure. And we know how this has played out. The leaders who like to appear powerful have generally chosen the economy. They delayed lockdowns, they played down the severity of the virus, and they wanted to reopen as soon as possible. Many of them said that coronavirus is just like a flu, it would go away. They refused to wear masks. And they often told us that they were the smartest people in their country. Sometimes they even declared they were the smartest people in the world and denigrated scientific advice. This occurred in the US, Brazil, England, all countries with high death tolls. Leadership for these people was about appearing powerful and unrestrained. So they chafed at any suggestion that they should just stay within their palace or their presidential residence, that they should wear masks. They refused to look as though they had been restrained and chained in by a wider crisis. That didn't go with their idea of what it meant to be a leader. They had risen to the top so they could enjoy all the trappings of power, including wealth. And they proved that they had no interest in giving that up for the public's welfare. Unwise leaders, like the fake mother, want to appear to be the real thing, but ultimately choose their own interests over the good of their populations. They allow the baby to be cut in half, and everyone suffers. So who's wise in our COVID times? Well, in Solomon's case, there were two forms of wisdom at work. There was the wisdom of the leader and the wisdom of the real mother. Solomon discovered who the real mother was, but he doesn't have the wisdom to raise the child. That's going to be up to her. And our political leaders can order lockdowns, but that's not going to make the virus go away. For that, we need vaccines. And so that means that as we look to our leaders to be wise, the other kind of wisdom is to be found among the people who were working on the vaccines. Those medicines are the life-giving part, the society-saving part of this situation. The mother of the vaccines are truly the wise ones who will save us all. But who are these lifesavers? One of the interesting developments of this pandemic time is that the vaccine companies have all become household words. We all know AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. When my youngest son got vaccinated on July 1st on Canada Day at a pop-up clinic, we found out about it because we were just walking down the street and there were a bunch of firefighters on the street just calling out, "Pfizer! You can have Pfizer here." And we all knew exactly what they meant. It was as though they were at a baseball game saying, "Get your peanuts, get your popcorn," but they were saying Pfizer, and everybody on the street passing by knew exactly what they meant. The names of these companies are well known, but the people who actually invented the vaccines are not so well known. Each vaccine started as an idea by a few scientists, yet no one calls out their names on the street corner. These are the people who have literally saved hundreds of millions of lives. They use their scientific wisdom to provide life. They're the real mothers of our time, if you like. Yet our media hasn't made them into stars. And that's a pity, because their stories are examples of how wisdom works in real life. So let me give you one example. The Pfizer vaccine was not invented by the Pfizer company. It was created by this husband and wife team in Germany. He is Ur Shahin, and she is Uzlem Toreshi. They own and operate a drug company called BioNTech, which they formed 10 years ago. Their company is devoted to creating mRNA vaccines to cure cancer. But their company has yet to produce a single drug which has ever gone to market. So it's very, very experimental work. They're medical doctors by training and also research scientists. They have a lot of degrees. They're also very wealthy, having sold their first company a few years ago to the Japanese, and they made over $1 billion when they did it. That allows them to be listed among Germany's 100 most wealthy people. And the story of the vaccine is interesting. It starts on a January night, January 24th, which was a Friday in 2020. And Shaheen was reading through the British medical journal, The Lancet, when he saw this article. It reported on a strange viral lung infection that was circulating in Wuhan, China. One of Shaheen's many talents is that he's really good at doing mathematical modeling. So he did some quick calculations, and he realized, based on the way the Chinese were doing their quarantine, that asymptomatic people were going to be able to escape their quarantine, and that this virus, given how far it had spread already within Wuhan, had all the markings of being a worldwide pandemic. He told his wife this the next day over breakfast, and she agreed. On Monday morning, they informed their staff of 1,200 people that half of them would have to drop all of their cancer work to try and find a way to create a vaccine for a virus that most of them had never even heard of. All ski vacations were canceled. Not a popular thing to do in Europe in January, but within a month, they had created 20 different candidates for the vaccine. But as a relatively new research company, they didn't have the infrastructure to create massive clinical trials. So they called up Pfizer and asked for help. The rest, as they say, is history. One of those 20 vaccine candidates worked and is now in many of our bodies. This husband and wife team have saved the world, and yet they're not household names. Why is that? Well, part of it is just because of who they are as people. As I mentioned earlier, they've sold a company before this, and they're very wealthy. That sale earned them $1 billion. And yet, you'd never know it by watching them day in, day out. They don't own a fancy mansion or vacation villas. Instead, they live in a small city in Germany, and they have a modest apartment that they share with their teenage daughter. They don't own a car. Shaheen doesn't even have a driver's license. They bike to work. Shaheen apparently often comes into office meetings with just wearing jeans, a shirt, and carrying his bicycle helmet. They've devoted their lives to bringing pure science to the bedside. As doctors, they say they were heartbroken when they had to tell cancer patients that they were going to die because there wasn't a proper medicine for them. And as research scientists, they knew that it was taking a long time for science to get from the lab to the bedside. So they personally decided to do something about that. They're humble people. They still teach medicine, and one of them still practices, even though they're running this company of over 1,000 people. Their deal with Pfizer was made over the phone without sorting out any of the financial contractual details. That happened months and months later because they knew that the work was so important and so time sensitive. Friends, I submit to you that this is what wisdom looks like in the modern world. People who deeply care about humanity and use their expertise to help without the expectation of fame or fortune. And this story has another twist. Shaheen and Tureshi both come from Turkish families. Shaheen was 4 years old when he and his mother emigrated to Germany, where his father was working as a guest worker in a Ford factory. Germany had been experiencing a labor shortage, so they decided to set up a program whereby Turkish workers could come. But many of the Turkish workers, like Shaheen's family, decided never to leave. But that doesn't mean that as Turks they were accepted in German society. Like migratory workers here, Turks have been seen as second-class citizens in Germany. Tereshi was born in Germany, the daughter of a Turkish surgeon who worked in a Catholic hospital. The couple met in medical school. Both are Muslims, and yet in the press, this is often ignored. Think about that for a moment. They had that fateful breakfast conversation in January of 2020 at a time when it was still official policy in the United States to ban Muslims from immigrating into the country. So it was a couple of Muslims who came up with one of the solutions, which is saving the world. And there's more. When Shaheen picked up the phone to call Pfizer, he spoke to this man, Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer. Like Shaheen, Bourla is an immigrant. He's a Jew who was born in Greece. And the part of Greece that he comes from is traditionally despised Turks after centuries of being occupied and attacked by the Ottoman Empire. He too immigrated from his country to make a life for himself. So for this vaccine to exist, 2 Muslim Turks in Germany had to work with and trust a company run by a Greek Jewish immigrant whose people hated Turks. All those differences and hatreds were put aside so they could work at lightning speed to save the world. And so far, until they all win Nobel Prizes, their names are mostly unknown on the street. This is the paradox of wisdom. It's quiet. It doesn't care about fame or fortune, although sometimes those things go along with it as a side effect. The wise ones are often unknown, yet they are the ones who we should be following and paying our most attention to. Only a few people in any country will ever become a prime minister or a president, or a king like Solomon. We hope that our leaders will be wise. We hope that they will see the people who are truly wise, like Solomon did when choosing the real mother over the fake mother. But as our scripture reading today suggested, there's another type of wisdom, the one possessed by that nameless mother who had volunteered to give up her baby to save the child's life. That kind of wisdom is based on love and care, and that kind of wisdom is the kind that all of us can cultivate. We don't have to live on Sussex Drive or have an office in the Oval Office. This kind of wisdom is free. God offers it to all of us, to anyone who will take it. It starts with humility and openness. So you may never become famous, but in your small way, you too can help save the world, one life at a time. Amen.
Come my way, my truth, my life, such a way as gives us breath, such a truth as ends all strife, such a life as Come, my light, my feast, my strength, such a light as shows a feast, such a feast as meant in length, such a strength as makes his guest. my joy, my love, my heart, such a joy as none can move, such a love as none can apart, such a heart as a joy